cold open. The sentence. Edo, 1701. A lord is handed a verdict that sounds impossible to modern ears. You will die today. Not by execution, by your own hand. Not because the state is weak, not because the state is merciful, but because the state is trying to protect something deeper than a body. This is the paradox we investigate tonight. How can a government maintain order by asking someone to end their own life and calling it honorable? The Court of History. Now fast forward to the year 2140. In the international tribunal known as the Court of History, we reopen a case that shaped Japan's moral imagination, the 47 Ronin. But today we focus on a single mechanism in that story, one that the modern world often misunderstands. Seppuku. Not as suicide, not as exotic ritual, as statecraft. The core claim. Here is the claim the tribunal will test. In Edo, Japan, seppuku functioned as a political technology. A way to punish, to close a story, and to preserve legitimacy, all at the same time. It allowed the state to say two contradictory things in one sentence. You are guilty, and you are still a person with honor. That contradiction is exactly why it worked. Exhibit A. The castle must never bleed. Exhibit A. The trigger. March 14, 1701. Inside Edo Castle Political Center, sacred space of authority, Lord Asano Naganori draws a sword and attacks Kira Yoshinaka. He fails to kill Kira, but the location matters more than the outcome. The shogunate cannot allow a precedent that violence inside the castle is negotiable. If the castle bleeds once, it can bleed again, and the entire system becomes a stage for future assassinations. So the state moves instantly. Asano is ordered to commit seppuku the same day. His domain is confiscated. His house is erased. To modern eyes, it looks extreme. To the shogunate, it is simple. The core must remain untouchable. Why did Asano strike? Disputed, but stakes are real. Now the tribunal asks what everyone asks. Why did Asano attack Kira? The honest answer is the motive is disputed. Some accounts emphasize humiliation and provocation during court ceremony. Others suggest expectations around gifts and protocol, and how refusing those expectations could lead to public embarrassment. We cannot prove the precise trigger, but here is what we can prove. In that society, public humiliation was not just emotional pain. It was reputational damage that could destroy the legitimacy of a house. And legitimacy was not decoration. It was infrastructure. So even if the spark is unclear, the system was combustible. Status, face, and honor were not private feelings. They were the operating rules of public life. Exhibit B. Why only Asano? Kenka Ryoseibai. The next question is controversial. There's a doctrine often summarized as Kenka Ryoseibai. When a fight breaks out, both sides are punished. So why was Kira not punished? From the shogunate's legal perspective, this was not treated as a mutual brawl. Asano drew steel inside the castle. Kira did not draw a blade. The government framed it as a unilateral breach of order, not an equal fight. But politically, something else mattered even more. The shogunate could not allow precedent that provocation justifies violence at the center of power. Because once you accept that excuse, every future assassin will claim it. So the state chose the simplest rule. The act is intolerable, regardless of motive. And that decision created a moral wound, a feeling among Asano's men that the outcome was not merely harsh, but unfair. That wound becomes fuel. The paradox of Seppuku. Why not execution? Now we reach today's central paradox. If Asano committed a grave crime, why not execute him publicly like a criminal? Because execution sends a single message. You are beneath us. Seppuku sends two messages at once. You violated the order, but you still belong to the moral class that holds society together. In other words, Seppuku punishes without destroying the moral grammar of the ruling class. It protects the system from two dangers. If the state humiliates the samurai class, it risks rebellion or moral collapse. If the state excuses them, it risks chaos and copycat. Seppuku sits in the narrowest space between. What seppuku buys. Why people accepted it. Now we return to the night raid, December 14, 1702. 47 Ronin kill Kira. Then they do not flee. They walk to their lord's grave, report the deed, and surrender. This is exactly what terrifies a government. They behave like disciplined agents, not criminals. So in 1703, the shogunate delivers a verdict that looks bizarre to modern law, but brilliant to political engineering. The Ronin must die, but by seppuku. The state says, you broke the law, the non-violent stands. And also, we recognize the moral logic that made you sympathetic. This is not mercy. It is legitimacy management. What seppuku buys. Why people accepted it. The tribunal now asks a deeper question. Why would society accept this mechanism? Because seppuku did something ordinary punishment could not do. It created a controlled ending. It turned revenge and shame into a closed account. It took a potentially endless cycle of retaliation into a final bracket. In many modern legal systems, justice aims to determine guilt and assign penalties. In this older moral system, justice also had to restore a social narrative. Who lost face? Who regained legitimacy? How does the story end without destabilizing the world? Seppuku was one answer, a brutal, controlled closure. Not freedom, not happiness, closure. Modern echoes keep it short and sharp. Now, why does this matter today? Because the modern form of seppuku is rarely physical, but the logic survives. In modern Japan, when scandal happens, you often see responsibility expressed as resignation. Sometimes, even when legal guilt is unclear. In Western settings, the first question tends to be, who is legally liable? In Japan, another question appears alongside it. What ending restores trust? Public apology. Resignation. A visible payment to repair reputation. Not the same as seppuku, but the same stability logic. Close the story, repair legitimacy, prevent chaos. Cross-examination. The dark side. But the tribunal also records the dark side. A system that relies on honorable self-destruction can become dangerous. It can pressure individuals to sacrifice themselves for institutions. It can reward silence instead of reform. It can make human life a tool for stability. So we do not romanticize it. We simply observe the function. Seppuku was a political technology for a society that feared instability and valued legitimacy as much as law. Final statement. The court's conclusion. The court of history offers this conclusion. Seppuku was not suicide culture. It was a system for managing contradiction. A state cannot allow private violence. A ruling class cannot survive if its moral code is publicly destroyed. So the shogunate chose a third path: punish the act. Preserve the moral grammar. Protect legitimacy. And that is why, in the 47 Ronin story, death was not the end of justice. It was the mechanism that made justice feel complete. Case adjourned.